Hey
Sure.
everyone, we have a special podcast today coming to you with Jordan and Mike. Today we're going to be talking about a skill specific topic. It's going to be on handstand advanced walking today, and we're excited about using this conversation to launch into a new plan that we're going to be putting out on the Power Monkey Training app. How to take your handstand walking in a linear fashion and move it to some new obstacles in different directions. So we're going to dive into some of maybe the questions you may have, and for someone like Jordan and Mike who are working on some of these things, we are going to walk through what handstand advanced
Cool.
walking might look like. Sound good to you guys?
Yeah,
Love it.
I'm ready. We could say this is like everybody's chance to pick Dave's brain, basically for Jordan and I, because we want to be better at our handstands. So we're lucky that we can be a little bit selfish and use this for our opportunity to grow. Dave, I have, I guess, a question, but the question is not completely handstand related. It's more like handstand adjacent. And I'm curious because of something that happened to me at the gym this week. I was not training handstands. I was surprise doing some squats. And one of the members of the gym that I train at while I'm in Hamburg, he came over to me immediately, said, I saw you doing this overhead squat thing on Instagram. I want to do it too. Will you watch me?
Was he doing
And
the Cossack squat?
yeah, and I was immediately mortified because at first I said, which one are you talking about? And he's like, the overhead, yeah, Cossack. So I told him what it was, overhead Cossack squat. He's like, I want to do it with 60 kilos, so like 135 pounds. I was like, all right, well, before you do that, could I see you do like just a body weight Cossack squat? I can do that, no problem. I was like, maybe a goblet then? No, I can do that too. And he like immediately got the barbell out and did a really, really interesting interpretation of what I would call the overhead.
Interpretive dance of the Cossack squat?
It was not great. And I was just like, I was like trying to explain to him, like, this is really, there's so many other things that we could be doing right now. And it's nice that you want to do this. And this story leads me to my question for you, because I feel like you probably see this a
Wait,
lot
did
of
he do the
times.
135 or not?
No.
You realize this
Thankfully,
guy's probably going to be listening to this podcast episode
yeah,
next
no,
time he
and
sees you.
he's a great guy, and I think he knew because he saw my face the whole time. Just I was like, this is like, you have to be ready for this, and even with the barbell, it's pretty awkward, and like I don't want you to tweak something, and there's progressions that we could go in to get you to this if you really want to do it, but like you don't need to do it. It should be something you want to do. So yeah, my main question is it made me think about probably either cringy moments for you or even like moments to offer some wisdom of like, how do you suit people going about it wrong when they try to handstand walk maybe before they're ready?
I mean, if anyone has ever done handstand walking with me in any of the courses that we've done over the years, the first question that I ask is how people attack handstand walking. And almost universally, the answer that I get is I just kind of like, I do it.
Mm-hmm.
I try. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And it basically is just then interpreted that the person just launches themselves at the ground and hopefully using momentum and enough shoulder strength to not collapse, turn it into a couple steps of walking. And that is not handstand walking. That is not a handstand walk. It's an eventual fall, is what I call it. It's just you're just, prolonging a fall 4 to 5 steps as opposed to actually handstand walking. So it's almost universally done unless you have someone who has a good understanding of what's going into handstand walking. Most people's attempts at handstand walks that don't have any background in handstands are just an eventual fall. You're just throwing yourself to the ground and hoping for the best, as opposed to saying, okay, what's my real issue here? So have I seen cringe-worthy moments when it comes to handstand walking? Absolutely. I'm sure everyone has. Has there been questions around better ways to approach it? Absolutely. And hopefully we can go through some of those now. But again, it's such a thing that people jump into probably way before they're ready or without a good foundation that, their progression is slowed considerably because of the way they're normally approaching it.
Yeah, it's like I know we preach this constantly of like kind of starting somewhere where it's let's say at your level of capacity, like what you can do. And I think for me, probably handstands is a difficult one for the general population, even within CrossFit, because most CrossFitters, outside of seeing like kipping handstand push-ups and handstand walks, until recently haven't seen much more than just that. So it's like they see a handstand walk. All right, I need to practice it. And I used the story at the beginning from mine, just like the guy saw what I did on Instagram. So he's like, all right, well, I've seen Mike do it. I'll just try it. And I think that the conversation around all skills probably needs to be around like just trying it is not the best way to approach a skill.
I just, to build off of that, the big unfortunate, I think, mistake, if you want to call it that, or missed opportunity when it came to adding handstands into the CrossFit setting early on was not a bigger emphasis on holding a handstand initially. There was not enough of an emphasis of saying, all right, can I hold a handstand for X, duration of time? Can I hold a handstand freestanding without taking a step without purpose and intention? And it's come now, what, CrossFit's been around 25 plus years, maybe longer than that from when Glassman actually started. And now, just the last couple of years, 2020 was the first time they introduced an actual handstand hold, right? And it was just a really missed opportunity in terms of some of the important building blocks and stepping stones that are necessary with the handstand before you apply it to something like a handstand push-up or a handstand walk with intention. So I think we're still trying to make up for lost time and break down bad habits because of the movements within a handstand that most people were introduced to prior to having a good base for it.
Well, and even in those cases with the games in the CrossFit setting, that handstand hold that you're talking about, that it wasn't a static hold. It was, you were allowed to move around within a box. And so I guess, my question is, as far as somebody wanting to try handstand walking, what would be the prerequisite in your mind that somebody should be able to do prior to even attempting a handstand handstand walk? Is it a fully static handstand? Is it something else? What's your thought about that?
I think they could be done in conjunction with one another for sure, but you should be working on stabilization of your handstand at all times. Like it's a part of moving away from the wall, and that's something that we teach endlessly, is that the wall can be an incredible tool in learning handstand, especially if you utilize it correctly. Most people don't at all. They utilize it actually in the incorrect way. And we don't have to dive too deeply into that, but just as an example, if the only way that you're ever doing handstand training with the wall is back to wall, which is a majority of people's handstand holds, is kicking up, going back to wall, you're teaching yourself that proper alignment is in a huge arch, like well past vertical, which doesn't translate into a freestanding from a stabilization standpoint or from a positional standpoint. So you're creating bad habits just because you're using the wall in an improper way. And the wall can be used in a really strong positional and stability way. But for the most part, it's just not being done. So I would recommend, yes, a lot of stabilization drills. I think 10 to 15 second freestanding handstand is a great place to be able to say, now I can take a step with purpose and intention. But I don't really even mind what CrossFit did in 2020 and saying part of that building block of staying in one place is condensing the area that you can walk within, which is going to force people to start to engage more through their fingertips and understand where weight distribution is happening through their shoulders and through their fingers, and how to engage in their forearms so they can actually start pulling their weight in different directions. So by condensing the space, it's at least a step in the right direction.
I'm curious. So yeah, I like Jordan's question. But I want to hold you to like the question that I think we do get. It's like, you have one exercise that you can give, and let's say that would like universally help everybody that's trying to improve their handstand walk. So from somebody that can kick up but can't walk at all to somebody who can walk but they definitely need to get better, is there just one drill that you would say, you know what, if there's just one and I only have one choice, I'm going to give this one?
I think it's important to understand that no is the right answer there. And the reason why no is the right answer is because everyone's problem is different. And if you universally say there's one drill, I'd say if there's one drill, it's not a handstand walking drill, it's a handstand drill. It's working on stabilizing your handstands more. So the best drill, it's not a handstand walking drill, it's a floater drill. You should be working on trying to actually stay in one place before you can do any other things in terms of taking a step with purpose and intention. So if I was to give one, it wouldn't be a handstand walking drill or exercise, it would be a stabilization drill. So then you could actually properly take a step. But when we talk about handstand walking drills, there are quite a large number that we normally recommend and that we work through in our courses that attack different deficiencies. You know, is it my T spine or inability to get into a nice uniform arch to be able to direct the weight in the direction that we're trying to go? You know, maybe are my wrists not mobile enough to be able to get my fingers directed in the correct direction to be able to control each step? Do I know how to do a bending and locking out technique through the arm so that I can take a step that relaxes the arm when the limb is off the ground and attacks when it's necessary? So there's like a lot of different things that go into it. But if there was one drill, it would not be a handstand walking drill. It would be, can I stabilize and then take a step with purpose?
You mentioned mobility there a little bit. How important is, like, let's say somebody who can, you know, stumble through a handstand walk like you see, but they want to get to that next advanced level, like what this program is that you put together. How important is mobility to that ability to build a solid foundation and get to that advanced level and walk in any direction?
It's critical to create efficiency. And most people have a very inefficient handstand walk, and they can get away with it because of one of two things. One, the athlete's strong enough to be able to mask their inefficiency. So it doesn't really matter how efficient they are. Their shoulders are so strong they can prevent themselves from falling. And also, it's okay to do that when you're on a flat surface. You can get away with it when you're on a flat surface. Because essentially what's going on here, if you do not have the mobility in your upper back or your underarm soft tissue is tight. Oh, this is actually kind of interesting. This is on my desk at all times. Look at this guy. This is a monkey that walks on his hands. So for the listeners out there, I have this little wind-up doll.
He's got.
Yeah. So this is the uniform arch that you want. And he's walking. See that? This is exactly on my desk at all times. It's this wind-up monkey that's walking on his hands in a nice uniform arch. This is what you want as you walk. Now, but essentially, if you don't have that mobility, what's going to happen is you're going to have your upper half and lower half doing two separate things. So your torso is going to be trying to move in the direction, or your legs are going to be trying to move in the direction you're trying to travel. Your arch will most likely happen through your lower back, and your torso is going to be pulling you in the opposing direction. So you're fighting yourself. Can I bend my legs? Can I wear heavy shoes? And can I bend in my lower back enough to offset the weight that I have traveling from my torso in the opposing direction? You can get away with this when you're walking on a flat surface. You will become extremely exposed if you're ever confronted with stairs or an incline or something like that. So most people think that their handstand walking is fine because they never have to do anything than walk in a straight line on a flat surface. But that's not a real handstand walk. It's really giving you a false sense of walking properly. So what I would recommend is try to walk up a couple of plates or a couple of steps or up an incline with that poor technique and see if it's feasible for you, or if you just suddenly tumble down and have to walk backwards. That's a pretty good indicator that a mobility component is probably something you're lacking.
Does that arch, that non-uniform arch and that poor mobility in the shoulders and so forth, does it also complicate trying to walk laterally?
Not so much. It won't create as much of a lateral issue. It's just, where's the stress being placed? And this is another important factor, is that if you can open up the shoulders beyond 180, you're going to start accessing new muscle groups and more muscle groups to be able to help control things. If you're in this closed shoulder angle, lower back doing a majority of the arch, knees bent, the front of the shoulders are doing a majority of the work, keeping you inverted. So anterior delt is doing almost all the work. As soon as you start extending into that nice uniform arch, you'll recruit anterior delt for sure, but then you can start distributing some of the into your traps, into your upper back, into your rear delts, and you start incorporating new muscle groups that you can start to share the load between. So this gives you the ability to stay up longer and to be able to manipulate your positions more for longer periods of time. So that actually will help take steps laterally and backwards and forwards on purpose and with intention. But I don't think it really affects too much of the lateral walking just in terms of being able to do it. But I do think it will allow you to stay inverted for longer periods of time because of this switching on and off of muscle groups that are normally dormant.
Mike, you've been doing a lot more handstand work. Are you walking laterally yet?
You know what? I I'm one of those patient learners, like maybe to a fault now. I'm on such a mission to just get a very, very nice, straight, static handstand. And definitely knowing my years of avoiding a lot of let's say universal mobility. I had like just enough for weightlifting. So getting into all the inverted positions has definitely been a challenge for me. So I'm pretty sure, given the opportunity to practice it a little bit, it would probably happen easier than it would have 2 or 3 years ago when I wasn't trying to just work on my static holds. So hopefully from the weightlifting side of Power Monkey, I'm at least making Dave proud in that side, that I'm definitely working a lot on stability, and that's been in conjunction with the mobility. You kind of like stole my mobility question thunder there, because I wanted to ask Dave. And again, it's like another one of those questions that probably doesn't have an easy answer, but from the years that we've been in the community now, do you see more of like a universal, let's say, lack of strength for people, like upper body, let's say upper body push, or being able to hold themselves inverted? Or do you see it maybe more collective in the community we're in, it's mobility restrictions?
Both. Depends on the group. So if it's for someone that's new to handstands, it's generally more an issue of strength, just not being able to actually take a step without collapsing. For the people that are good in quotes with handstand walking, their bigger limitation is their mobility, because they lean so much into their strength, like we talked about, that they forget that mobility becomes a component. And they can just say, hey, most of the time when I need to utilize my handstand walking, it's going from point A to point B in a straight line, and I can get away with the mobility that I have to be able to complete that task. So they never get confronted with saying, hey, my mobility is a limiting factor in me being able to attack this from a different direction, or being able to, say, shit, there are other handstand walking variations that I need to be prepared for, that maybe I should be working on T-spine exercises or underarm soft tissue exercises, or anything else that's going to open up that shoulder angle. They can just say, hey, my strength is adequate for me to be able to, tackle these movements as they've been prescribed up to this point. So it depends on the demographic. New people with handstand walking is generally a lack of strength. People that are good with handstand walking, it's a mobility issue.
That's kind of cool for me to hear. I think I sort of knew that from being with you enough, but never really thought of it in the sense of it's similar, I think, in weightlifting too. Like, so many people that come in and haven't done much actually have a pretty decent amount of mobility, like once we start to show them where to go with it, but their strength is often lacking in a lot of those positions. But the people that have been, let's say, practicing and relying on what they know as familiar, usually like shortened ranges of motion or exaggerated positions, they have a lot more work to do on the mobility side of things.
And just one more note on that. It's not to say that new people are not immobile as well. Like, that can happen. You can be weak and immobile too. But what we also see is an overdevelopment on the people that are the stronger ones. There's an overdevelopment of certain muscle groups that ends up limiting their mobility. So as they get stronger, the mobility becomes decreased, which then in turn affects their ability to handstand walk more efficiently. So you end up becoming tighter in certain areas that prevents you from being able to do a better handstand walk. So there are just some little caveats to that for sure.
I'd like to start talking about the new program a little bit, if that's cool.
Let's do it.
Let's I guess my first question for you, Dave, is like, we already have a handstand walking program out there, a foundations program, and this is the quote advanced program. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, what is the major difference between these two programs, and what problem does this new program fill for our users?
The foundations, Handstand Walk Foundations program that's already in the Power Monkey Training app, is all about the demographic that we just discussed. People that have never been walking on their hands before, maybe new to handstands. And it takes it from a very ground level approach of saying, what are some of the tools that we need to have in place, working on stability exercises, working on getting inverted more, working on some of these things in terms of bending and locking out technique? Do I understand how to shift properly from one side to the other so that I can actually take a step with purpose and intention? So it starts very much from a ground level approach with a lot of the technical components that we preach when it comes to proper handstand walking. The advanced plan takes it to that next level of saying, okay, I have a good handstand walk. I can walk from point A to point B, 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever it might be, without too much issue. But now that we're starting to see some new obstacles and some different directions that need to be taken into account, point A to point B is not enough. And like we said, you can get away with a lot of inefficiencies going from point A to point B and think that you're good at handstand walking, but you're actually not. So you may be exposed when the level of difficulty of the movement pattern changes. So what we started to do with this new advanced plan is tackle it from different directions. You need to have some prerequisites. It's recommended that you take the foundations course to understand kind of the way that we teach and some of the general foundational methods. And one of the other things is having at least a minimum of an unbroken 20-foot handstand walk as like a prerequisite. The things you're going to be tackling in the plan are lateral walks, pirouetting, walking up and down obstacles, walking forward and backwards on purpose. We're going to be walking for speed. So we're actually going to be learning how to sprint, some techniques around sprinting on your hands. And then obviously doing things in all different directions, walking forward, back. We have obviously working towards obstacles. But for my perspective, this advanced is the name of the plan itself, but essentially it's like the level 2. It's the next level up in terms of what you might be exposed to and preparation for handstand walkers out there that maybe are competitive.
I'm sure that everybody wants to be able to do all of those things on their hands. And maybe can we talk about just one of like walking faster? What would be the first thing or the biggest thing that you see as a limiter for people who want to be walking faster? How would you get them walking faster without going too much into the weeds on it?
So think about a lot of these things on how you would walk or run faster. Like, again, it's a demo that we normally do in our courses to be able to give a visual to this. But if you're on your feet, to be able to increase speed, you need to what? You need to be able to lean or get weight traveling in that direction. And then if your feet can catch up with the amount of weight and lean you have, the faster you can potentially propel yourself. So translate that into a faster handstand walk. It comes to what we already discussed, a more mobile upper back and opening up of the shoulder. And the reason for that is because your limitation in creating speed will be dictated according to how much weight you can get traveling in the direction you're trying to go. So if you have a very close shoulder angle, it's going to force you to be in a very poor position. And again, you're fighting yourself. Your upper half and lower half are doing completely different things. So you're trying to get your weight traveling forward, but your torso weight is pulling you backwards. So the most important thing in terms of being able to walk faster, without talking about some of the nuance in terms of how to take a step with proper intention, is to be able to get your T-spine more mobile and to be able to get your shoulder angle beyond 180 degrees. So we need to be focusing completely on that mobility component before we can actually start taking some additional technical steps in terms of speeding up the steps.
So wait, you're saying that it doesn't have anything to do with your hands turned in, neutral, or out? And we hear people talk about that all the time on the socials. That in order to go faster, I put my hands to the side. In order to go slower, I turn my hands in. What's that all about?
So fingertip direction, those cues that you normally see are normally limited by wrist mobility. So people who say like turning fingertips a particular direction are limiting themselves because their wrists are probably preventing them from getting into a nice uniform arch. So as soon as you start to turn your fingers out, it will allow you to dump your weight further forward because you don't have that, that's stopping of your wrist preventing you from getting your weight traveling forward. So it's basically a stopgap to the real problem. People are doing it not because it's correct technically, it's because it's a way around working on the real issue. So it's not working on better wrist mobility, because if you think about it, the fingertips actually will play a role in being able to control your steps. And again, it's not something that most people consider right now because they're not being asked to walk on purpose in a particular direction and then backwards and then laterally. As soon as you start creating an environment where maybe you have to walk and then stop for 15 seconds and then walk backwards and stop for 15 seconds, the direction of the fingertips will play a much more critical role in terms of direction because you have to use them and engage against the ground to stabilize. So if you're telling someone to turn the hands out or even backwards so that you can speed up the direction, that's a working around of the real issue. It's not fixing the problem. It's just saying, hey, we know your limitation is mobility and we're just not going to focus on that. We're just going to turn your hands out so you can dump your weight forward and hopefully not collapse. Does that make sense?
It does. And I imagine that Mike's probably got plenty of stories of a correlated, issue he sees in the weightlifting world all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I can squat more if I don't have to squat so deep. All right, just don't squat so deep then. You'll squat lots of weight. Okay. You're not like, and I like that. I think it's always fair, Dave, which is good. Anybody that's learned from you is you're always challenging people to think of the highest level of the skill, like on the spectrum of what they're performing. So like, for a lot of people that are in the gym or a lot of you that are listening, you're thinking like, I mean, right now I just want to do a handstand, or right now I want to walk a little bit faster. But both of those are like still pretty low, or like, I don't even want to say low, but like they're still pretty far on the beginner level of the spectrum. And like, you could call a new program, it's like the handstand advancing program. Like you're never stopping your advancement. So you want to set yourself up with the tools to be able to move forward and not have to then like go backwards to fix all kinds of faults. So I like when you're kind of reminding people to keep their perspectives and their eyes open, that like what you're working on now is towards something even cooler and even bigger and even better. And then when you get there, it's even cooler and even bigger and even better. But it all starts from like that initial entry point that we get into the skill on.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's something that we reiterate constantly. And no matter what we're talking about, it all comes down to the same idea that you mentioned, Mike, working towards the highest level version of the movement. We were talking with Boz and Pat Sherwood on their podcast not that long ago. Boz put it in a way of saying the highest expression of the movement, right? Same idea. Like we're trying to always give people a foundation so that if something does change from a standards or, from the way that they're normally viewing it, they're going to be able to attack it properly rather than saying, shit, I only learned it this particular way. Now this is forcing me to have my fingertips forward because I need to try to stabilize. And I've only learned how to walk with my fingertips turned out. So now I have to completely relearn my movement pattern. And so what we're trying to do is say, no matter how difficult the movement pattern is going to become, we've set you in a foundation to be prepared for the next level. And I may have said this on other podcasts that we've done before, but I'm speaking from perspective, experiential perspective too. When I was a gymnast, I learned gymnastics and certain movements incorrectly when I was young. Like the biggest example is I learned how to twist wrong, meaning I would twist with my head out, which is an absolute no-no in the gymnastics world. You do not twist with your head out, back, eyes back. You always want to be twisting with a head neutral, even slightly down to kind of facilitate a faster twist. And because I learned that poorly and no one said, hey, this is probably going to impact your ability to twist better as we go from a fold to a 1.5 to a double fold to a 2.5 to a triple fold to 3.5 to 4, whatever that, it prevented me from being able to twist efficiently as I became an elite gymnast. And it was because no one said, hey, you probably should fix this now in the case that you're going to have to utilize it once the difficulty of the movement increases. And it always bothered me. It always bothered me to say, like, I have to make work this really terrible twisting technique, even though I'm trying to apply it to a really high level movement pattern. And I would make it work, but it was completely inefficient. It really limited my ability to become the highest level athlete I could because I learned it incorrectly and didn't take the time to fix it when I was young. So we're trying to get you guys to understand that maybe you might not see the value right now, but look towards where you can be going with these things because there is value for those later skills.
And it's probably the least sexy thing to say right now, but like staying healthy is like the best part of training. and I'm always very proud of how we teach our skills. And, the more let's say immersed I get on the gymnastic side of how we teach in Power Monkey, it's like, you explain to a lot of people that, maybe the more that you're doing your handstands, you have to really take care of your wrists and your elbows and be smart with increasing volume and frequency. And I'm thankful that I learned all of this from our methods, because there are no wrist problems for me. There are no elbow problems for me. There are no shoulder problems for me. But I'm like, to the point of neurotic now with like wanting to have my hands in the right position, because I see what that does, from my years in weightlifting, maybe like you having some, poor learning habits when I was younger, and then always trying to correct it. So like, when given the opportunity to learn a skill and a progression in a certain way from people that you trust, like, embrace the process and trust it, because then, you're going to end up on the other side, like, one, healthy, and then two, progressing to your max potential, which is always cool.
Really quickly, Mike, just a question for you. With your handstand hold, what's your max hold time? I didn't mention earlier, but Mike's handstand hold, not just hold time, but his position has been very impressive. Mike has been kicking ass on the amount of time and emphasis he's been putting on his handstands. Very proud of you, Mike. Kicking ass. Awesome to see.
I'm just trying to catch up to Jordan, though. Jordan's is like,
yeah, both you guys. But fingertip direction. Do you find that stabilizing your handstand comes a lot from those fingers? And I mean,
so much. Yeah, so much. I actually, because like before we started recording, Jordan and I were talking about handstand push-ups, and because I have like my shoulders are a little bit tighter to get into some of the positions I would like to for handstand push-up, I end up having to go a little bit wider with my hands, and then I don't necessarily want them to turn out, but because of the angle that it puts on my wrist, I have to turn out a little bit. And it's such an adjustment for me, because the stability is like completely away at that point from what I'm familiar with in what I would say is like my good normal position. So it's something where I'm kind of like trying to fill in that gap and get them both to be more uniform. But yeah, I'm still amazed at how active my fingers are in the handstand, but at the same time, it's so reinforcing on a parallel with weightlifting, because everybody laughs at me when I talk so much about the toes in your foot when you're lifting. And like, I'm like, your big toe and all of your toes when you're lifting are your brain. And like, to me, your fingers are when you're inverted. Like, if you don't have control of those, then you're not the most conscious inverted athlete, and you're not the most conscious weightlifter when you don't have, an awareness of what your toes are doing.
Yeah, I love it. That floater drill you mentioned earlier, Dave, is huge. I give it to people at the gym all the time that want to start doing handstands as like one of the first things that they should be doing, just to make that connection in their mind of what their hands should be doing. I was doing a handstand at the gym a little while back, and the coach came up and he watched, and then when I came down, he goes, I was looking at your fingers and they were like white and like bent and all these things. He's like, you're really leaning into your fingers, huh? And I'm like, yeah, that's like the whole thing. I mean, outside of being a rigid body, like you really need to activate those fingers. So those floater drills that you mentioned, I think are really excellent, and they're definitely my favorite drill. Just not just to give to other people, but to like refresh myself whenever I feel like I'm, need to make an improvement on my handstand.
They're incredibly valuable. It's such a great tool, especially if you do it correctly. Now that's important. We can put a link in the notes to the floater exercises, because I want people to understand exactly what we're talking about. It's basically, you can do them stomach to wall or back to wall. Most people do them back to wall when they're first starting out, starting a little bit of a distance away from the wall, and then the feet will come away from the wall, and you're trying to magically find this sweet spot. And most people will do it where they kick off the wall. Well, they'll just kick, and then hopefully something magical will happen and they'll just stabilize. That is not that drill. That is 100% not how you do that drill. In fact, it will teach you to not find any stabilization. The goal is to start from the ground up with that drill, and exactly do what you're talking about, Jordan, is to see the whites of the fingernails, to engage through the tips of the fingers so much, and to get those forearms pumping so that your shoulders and then your hips and your feet slowly peel away from the wall, so that you can actually understand how much digging into the ground is necessary to move your weight and find a distribution point where the weight is finally centered. So that drill should always be thought of as from the ground up. What are my fingertips doing? Followed by my shoulders, followed by my hips, then followed by my feet. If you're just kicking off the wall and hoping something is going to magically happen, it just is not the purpose of the drill. It's not going to work for you. So check out the video and really try to appreciate whether or not the fingertips are working. And one more thing I like to tell people is the way that I engage against the ground, and that's why the fingertip direction kind of matters. If you're turning your fingertips out, you'll end up disengaging your three outside fingers and you end up trying to stabilize only from your index finger and your thumb. It's a very weak position to stabilize from at a higher level. So by turning more forward as best you can with your wrist mobility and maybe a strength issue, you want to be able to engage through all of your fingertips. And I tell people, I think of it as almost like palming a basketball, where I think of digging into the ground so much as if I was almost palming into a basketball, where my fingers create kind of like little hollow shapes throughout my finger. And that's the way that I do it. So I think of like hollow fingers where there's a little bit of space between my knuckle and the ground. Other people like to stabilize through like spider fingers, especially hand balancers, where they'll create a broken knuckle position where there's a severe angle at the knuckle, and pull their fingers in closer to their palm and stabilize from that perspective. Some people find that to be very effective. I think the wider the base, the more effective I can be in terms of stabilizing. And I find it to be something I can apply to a handstand walk more effectively. I think it's a little bit more challenging to expect to be able to do a spider finger when you're taking a step. So play around with both. But from my experience and from the way that I apply it to different walking and stabilized handstand exercises, the wider the base and that more like hollow finger type of position engaging works well for me.
I think I probably am more like the spider finger, and I'm sure that's the reason why I don't have a 10-minute handstand yet.
It's most likely.
That's
probably what it is. Yeah. But there are definitely people out there that can do 10-minute with spider fingers. So who knows? They probably can't walk very well.
There you go. Okay, give me something. All right. Yeah. So last question from me, Mike, and then if you have anything else, but what can people expect as far as a commitment if they start doing this program?
Sure. The program is 2 days a week. In total, it's 3 months. So you're going to get 2 sessions per week. The sessions have reoccurring mobility and accessory as part of each of the warm-ups. They're recommended depending on what time you have available with all your additional training. They're not absolutely necessary, but I would do them. And then the bulk of the training, kind of meat and potatoes of the training, should take no longer than 30 minutes per session. So I think they're doable in conjunction with other things that people are doing on a daily, weekly basis, but expect to be able to spend about an hour to an hour and a half on handstand walking drills and skills per week over the course of those 3 months. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I guess I lied. I do have one other question. We talked a little bit about where the sport is going, the sport of functional fitness is going in terms of handstand walking and like obstacles and more advanced things. What, as an event, an inverted handstand walking event, would you like to see in one of these next iterations of competition?
Well, the easy one that I'd love to see is it might turn into a bit of a shit show, but a sprint. I would love to see a sprint. I think it would be really interesting to see what a 30-foot sprint might look like for people on their hands, just to be able to say, hey, what are the techniques being used by the people that are fastest on their hands? And are there some things that can create more efficiency? But in terms of additional obstacles, there's so many directions you can take with it. The one thing that we talked about on the podcast last year, after the games, maybe last year, a few months ago, was the way that they introduced the freestanding kipping handstand push-ups into the workout during the handstand walk inverted medley, I think it was called, that workout from the games. I would love to see strict freestanding handstand push-up, obviously, but I would also love to see multiple reps so that people have to show control between the repetitions, as opposed to leaning into where most of these athletes' strengths are, and it's shoulder strength. So if you just have one rep or you just dump into the next exercise, it's not showing me at all that the athlete is actually capable of stabilizing. So I would love to see a handstand obstacle course that incorporates a hold along with movement. So meaning stop on a dime, show me a hold for 10, 15 seconds, then go do a strict handstand push-up, then go. Because if you're just constantly dumping forward, that doesn't tell me that you have control. So I would love to see some precision with their walking as opposed to just saying, I'm fast because my shoulders are strong enough to be able to catch up.
This is why Mike's been practicing his freestanding handstand push-ups, because
I'm so ready.
He's ready to go.
Yeah.
Mike also has never attended the handstand walking challenge.
I did one, and it was
what year was this, Mike?
I don't know. We have video and photo evidence of every year we've done that, so I'll go back and check.
I'm in there. I guarantee it, because it was the year that Jay also did it, and he was super disappointed.
Jay's done it a couple of years.
Yeah, Jay's done it. He just hasn't done it the last couple of camps.
Right. No, I have, but I have. I promise you, I wouldn't lie about that. I've done it exactly one time, and it's just very, very, very aggressively competitive. So now I like to stay,
but with a lot of smiles and laughs. It's
no, totally. Yeah, it is. I don't like to pick teams at this point, and I like both team captains a lot. Love them both, and I just don't want to have to choose one.
Well, it was Karen Ward and Gary were the captains last camp, so
love both of them.
Remember, it's not just the Oshas and Daves of the world that are captaining up those teams.
I do before we cancel out here. I just wanted to affirm that I would love to see a handstand sprint race, but with the stopping. Like, I think to see athletes have to go a certain amount of distance, like into a square, and then pause for 10 seconds before they can continue, would just be a phenomenal way to show control, discipline, patience, like everything. I think that would be a really, really fun one to watch.
And the other thing that, wait, real quick, Jordan, the other thing that I would put as a kind of a portion of that walking workout is that it had to be unbroken. Like, if you fall and you try to go so fast that you can't control it, you're out.
Yep.
Like there's
like
no
one and done.
Back up. Like there's no kicking back up. There's no moving back 5 steps. If you try to go so fast that you can't manage your speed, it tells me that you don't have the control and you're out. Like, you're done at that point.
That takes
you have to be able to you have to be able to maintain the speed that you're generating. So control along with speed. Those two components need to be put together.
I like that.
One event. Give us one event to program for the games. This event brought to you by Power Monkey Fitness.
Came up on the fly on a podcast. I mean, I do love the fact about like introducing control, because I mean, I see it all the time in people in the gym trying to do just a regular handstand. They kick up and then they're moving their hands to find the balance point. And I tell them all the time, like, if you keep moving your hands, you're just going to get good at moving your hands. You're not going to get good at actually holding a handstand. So like, go down and commit to your hands aren't moving. And if you're going to fall over, you're going to fight for it. And that's where that floater drill comes in. You're going to learn how to press in your hands, and then you might end up falling over. You'll pirouette out, but you'll build strength and awareness there. And eventually you'll be able to hold it if you couple it with other drills too. I think that Wodapalooza did a great event last year where they had that parallel handstand hold, and you couldn't really move your hands very much at all, really. No, I didn't see really any of the athletes kind of doing that, constantly trying to find the balance point. They just kicked up, and it was great to see that amount of control across the board from almost everybody.
Okay, so a couple of things there. One, I like what you mentioned there. If I was to program, if I was working with an athlete that struggles in the way that you mentioned, Jordan, where they're constantly moving their hands, I would program a situation where if they're doing kick-ups, back and forth between their turns, they would go to a floater drill and then come back to freestanding. Go to a floater drill, reinforce the idea of what the fingertips should be doing, then come to a freestanding. So that they're constantly reinforcing what we're trying to get them to do. Don't expect them to just change it on a dime. Give them a more simplified version through a floater so that they can start to appreciate what's going on from a technical perspective, and then apply it to that freestanding variation. So that's the way that I would program if I noticed that was a big limitation for someone. With the workout that we saw at Wodapalooza, you didn't see people walking because people had never been holding on parallettes before. They were scared to try and walk because they would probably taken a header and just fallen right on their face. You can absolutely walk on parallel bars. You can absolutely move and shift weight and take stress off of the palm of your hand on parallel bars and hold a handstand. It's not because it's not possible. It's because people never train that variation of a handstand hold. It's much different in terms of what's controlling the movement pattern forward to back from the wrist rather than through the fingertips. Mm-hmm. And so it's a much different hold position, but In the gymnastics world, we are on parallel bars and parallettes and rings all the time. So we're engaging through the wrist and working on how to manipulate those hand placements often. So it wasn't because people couldn't, it's because they didn't know how. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I would still like to see an event where they were not allowed to move their hands, just on the floor.
No, me too. I think it'll happen. I think it will happen for sure. We'll see another iteration of a handstand hold. I still think that for a majority of the way that athletes are training, that high level games level athlete, I still think that a 3-minute handstand hold is kind of the upper level barrier that most of them won't be able to overcome until they put some real considered effort into durations for their handstands. Katrin's still the one to beat, 254.
Mike, you're on track to beat her. I can see it now.
No, I was just laughing. I was like, this would be a really like lame challenge. Would be like, who can do it first, Mike or the elite CrossFit Games man? 3-minute handstand hold. Go.
I know, Mike.
What are you at now, Mike? What's your hold?
Yeah, I think I mean my best is like only 115, but I think I haven't tried long ones for a little while now, so I think I'm close to 90 seconds. But that's
well, that was the top time for the guys. I think Noah got 90 seconds, minute 30. Yeah. So you're not far away from winning the games on a handstand.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep that in mind.
Mike, 90-second handstand hold. He can do a freestanding handstand push up. Just give him the trophy right now.
Man, honestly, I know, really. This is like I feel like the uncle that's at like the junior high football.
Back in 1984, I used to throw a football quarter mile.
Everything that I can do, but it'd be a fun challenge. So you guys, if you want to keep up on it, I'll keep everybody updated on my progress.
Well, let's finish out the year with your squats, and then we'll turn into handstands 365. Start January 1.
There you go. As long as I don't have to do running 365.
That's just for the 30-hour period when we do hood to coast. Mike has to run for 30 hours straight once a year, and that's
my dose.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the other video I'm going to throw into the show notes is the one of you, Dave, running on your hands with Easy Muhammad running on his feet next to you at camp. I think that could give people a really good indication of like, hey, what is possible? When Dave says a sprint on your hands, is he just like, sprint in air quotes? Like, no, it's a legitimate sprint. Like he's going probably as fast as maybe Mike could run on his feet.
This is very true.
It's worth noting too, if you put that video up, what my legs are doing, and some of the plan will be a part of this too. I think most people think that the way that I teach is so precise and so technical that a handstand walk is meant to be done perfectly aligned with that beautiful uniform arch, and it is. But an application to a setting where we're talking about sprinting will change the position of what my legs are doing. And I get this question in courses a lot. Well, like, is it okay? Or what about, splitting of the legs to help kind of propel yourself forward? And I always tell people that there's a big difference between splitting your legs on purpose and kind of in action that's in line with your steps to help propel your weight more aggressively forward, as opposed to your legs just being dead weight and moving in any direction that kind of, your weight distribution deems necessary to keep you moving forward, where there's no purpose behind it. So do I think it's okay to actually have your legs split as you start to sprint? Yeah, but you need to know what your legs are doing and how they can actually facilitate you walking faster. And so actually in the plan, there's going to be handstand walking from a speed and sprint perspective, where there is split walking drills, and they're meant to be done with purpose and intention, where the legs are still a consideration. Split will be done to get your weight to travel faster in that direction. So when you watch me sprinting against Easy when he's, running, it's a joke race, but you notice that my legs are not perfect, but it's done with purpose. Again, even that is done with purpose.
It's like if you're running on your feet, your arms aren't flailing in all different directions. They're pumping kind of in unison with what your legs are doing. And that's basically what you're talking about, right? It's like your legs, when you're inverted, need to be quote unquote pumping in the sort of same way that your arms would be moving as you're running.
Exactly. Your whole body needs to be working as one continuous piece. That's the best way to do it. You need to start getting a better understanding of what every part of your body is doing so you can actually get them to work together. Mike, also, I want to give a shout out to Easy. Easy's handstand walks and his ability on his hands for a bigger dude that didn't grow up with gymnastics is phenomenal. And the dude is constantly posting on his page about working on obstacles and working on handstands from different directions. I'm always impressed with the amount of work the guy's doing on his hands, considering he comes from a CrossFit and a basketball background. He's a beast. That's why we love him at Power Monkey for sure.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun for sure.
All right. Anything else, guys? What do we got?
That's
Dave,
it from me, Mike.
Thank you for your words of wisdom. It's always enlightening and reaffirming. And yeah, I can't wait till the next one.
Yeah, everybody. So this plan is going to be available soon in the app. I'm excited for it. I think it'll help a lot of athletes out there that are looking to become a little bit more capable on their hands. For those of you that are new to handstand walking, check out the plan that's already in there, the Handstand Walking Foundations. It's a great place to start if you want to become more comfortable before you start running on your hands. So check out that plan as well, available at powermonkeytraining.com. And thank you guys for the questions. Mike and Jordan, I'm going to keep track of all your handstand journey as we've been doing and seeing how those progress reports are coming along.
Well,
So
Mike
keep
has
me
lit a
posted.
fire under me because he's been pretty diligent with his practicing and I have not been. So I've been stepping it up because I don't want him to
accountability buddies
outshine my
you had him a while
mediocre-
ago, but he definitely has stepped up his game.
He's for sure.
He's surpassed most people when it comes to his holds now. He's kicking ass.
I did do 2 freestanding handstand push-ups today at the gym, which I felt really good about without too much. I haven't really done anything for those yet, but they feel pretty good. So I'm going to keep on working on those as well.
One at a time.
Before you throw the outro there, since we're giving everybody so many, shout outs, we can't forget probably the best Power Monkey handstander in terms of our community members. Karen Ward, hello.
Oh, yeah.
So Karen is like the handstand all-star. I think she's ready to come to camp and be your assistant pretty soon, Dave. Like she's crushing
welcome. She would be welcome to be my assistant. Yeah. Karen's 13-time camper, knows my info and everyone else's info at the coaching stations better than the coaches themselves. So it's not surprising that she gets to show it off with the handstand walking and the press the handstands too. She's just a beast when it comes to gymnastics movement in general. So
I was going through some of the video footage from the relay races the other day because I'm putting some marketing materials together for the new program. And there's one, it only happens with Karen. She's doing the walk. Both teams are chanting her name. Like as she's going down the thing with perfect straight form. And it's just like everybody else goes, everyone's just clapping. Come on, let's go. But when Karen goes, Karen, it's like people love her. She's the best.
She's the new mayor of Power Monkey Camp. I think she took, we haven't had Ortiz back in a while. So she's taken over the mantle of being the most loved.
100%.
Well, thanks guys. I appreciate the time today talking about another one of my loves, handstands in any capacity, any form. This one, obviously walking on your hands, but hopefully we can actually start answering some questions around these things because I want to see what people got going on when it comes to a handstand walk. Post some videos, guys. Show us your progress. We want to see what's going on this. For all the listeners out there, please be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. We have some amazing courses that Mike has lined up for us through the end of the year and through 2024. Most of those throughout the entire year are already ready to go. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, at Mike Cerbus, and at Jordan Samuel Photo. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Dave Durante with my co-hosts today, Mike Cerbus and Jordan Samuel. And until next time, thank you all for listening.